I apologize for the two different videos. I'm at work right now, so I had to answer the door. Anyway, Urban Peak doesn't specialize in serving only female homeless youth. They don't specialize in preventing entrance into the sex trafficking ring either. So they're basically just trying to catch a deluge in a cup right now. So working with them as far as obtaining referrals from them and collaborating with them to help support the homeless population in Denver just by taking in some of the girls instead of having them go to Urban Peak. Another reason that our agency will only be catering to adolescent girls is due to any trauma histories as well. So a lot of these girls have sexual trauma, verbal trauma, physical trauma in their histories, and especially the sexual trauma is usually happens with either male family members, male acquaintances, or unknown male persons. So going to a co-ed shelter when you're homeless or running away from home and you have that trauma history is a little bit difficult to kind of enter into that shelter situation when you're already in a vulnerable state. So that's the reason that Safe Place will be catering only to adolescent girls and not necessarily adolescent boys. Statistics also show that the majority of sex trafficking happens to adolescent girls or women in general. About 98% of the victims of sex trafficking are girls and women. So that's the reason for kind of excluding males from this shelter situation. So some other community partners that we're going to be collaborating with will be the Department of Human Services and Social Services, so working with the foster care system as well, and helping to kind of ensure cooperation with the social services to help prevent homeless youth and homeless adolescent girls. And then usually in this situation where girls are running away from home or they're involved in the foster care system, they're already involved in social services as well. So having them as a community partner will be crucial in the success of the agency. Working with the Denver Police Department and the Metro Police Departments is going to be helpful as well. Sometimes these girls are picked up by police or, the police department is basically kind of the front line in rescuing girls out of the sex slave trade, so having them on the front line as well in the prevention aspect of reducing girls entering into the sex slave trade is going to be helpful in the success of the agency as well. Going to schools and healthcare clinics is going to be super helpful, like I was saying, to kind of collaborate with those community resources as well. So that's community resources. The goals of the agency, there are three main goals of the agency. The first one is to decrease the number of homeless and runaway adolescent girls living in Denver and the metro area. So that's kind of an all-encompassing goal. That's our biggest goal, is to reduce those numbers so that there aren't as many girls needing to be rescued out of the sex slave trade. We're hoping to create more of a prevention strategy. As it stands right now, there is no prevention strategy for girls entering into the sex slave trade. Everything's kind of happening on the back end when they already need to be rescued out of the sex slave trade. Denver Police Department and the FBI have rescued over 300 girls out of Denver alone in the sex slave trade in the last 4 years. So we're hoping to reduce that number of girls needing to be rescued just by preventing them from entering into the actual sex slave trade before it happens. The second goal is to create collaborative relationships with community partners to increase resources and supports available for this population. So that goes back again to collaborating with those community partners to help create kind of a community of prevention for this population. Our third goal is to reunify runaway and homeless adolescent girls with their home of origin or unify them with a new home. So this is going to be a big obstacle for us. I think this is going to be one of our hardest goals. Girls who are already homeless are homeless for a reason. So trying to unify or reunify them with any home or a home of origin is going to be a struggle in itself. Girls who are running away for the first time or have multiple runaways under their belt, they might be a little bit easier to reunify with their homes of origin or their foster care homes, just with more supports in place. And that's what we're kind of hoping to provide to sort of be the glue that unifies these community resources to help support girls in their homes and their homes of origin, to help prevent any runaway situations in the future, which those runaway situations could lead to entrance into the sex slave trade. The problem with these girls who are running away from home, I think it is about 80% of the girls who are rescued out of the sex slave trade have at least one runaway under their belts. And the sex traffickers, predators, pimps, all those guys are true experts in their field. They can sort of identify, pinpoint weaknesses, if you will, or vulnerabilities in these girls who are on the streets and running away from home or anything like that, and they definitely prey upon those vulnerabilities and kind of create these relationships with these girls and end up just trafficking them, to no fault of the girls, but it's just one of those situations that the predators, traffickers utilize mental techniques and emotional techniques to get them to work for them, and it is literal slavery. These girls aren't making any of their own money. It all goes to the pimps. It all goes to the traffickers. So anyway, those are our goals. I got off on a rant there. So basically, this resource is a necessary, this agency is a necessary resource for our community. It's filling a hole, a prevention hole that is lacking in the community right now. I attended a sex trafficking training at my place of work at Community Reach Center, and there was a representative from the Denver Innocence Lost Task Force there. He works for the Denver Police Department, and he was talking about all these prevention techniques and how they're working on rescuing girls and kind of figuring out the difference between prostitution and actual slavery, who's being arrested, who's being rescued, things like that. What are we doing as far as services go to help these girls after they're rescued out of the sex slave trade? And I asked him what was being done as far as prevention, because all of these girls, most of these girls, 80% of these girls have runaways under their belts. What's being done as far as prevention goes to help keep these girls from entering into the sex slave trade in the first place? And he was unable to answer that at all. He said, well, there's one youth shelter in Denver, Urban Peak, but that's really it. And he's definitely an expert in this field. So this agency is going to fill a huge gap in prevention of girls entering the sex slave trade. This is going to be the first agency of its kind in Denver that caters only to girls who are running away from home or are already homeless. And it basically is just going to be a safe house, a safe place to go. They really just need a safe place to kind of rest, get their bearings, understand what happened, why did they run away from home, what caused them to be homeless in the first place, figure out what needs to happen in order for them to be safe for a long period of time, kind of figure out what needs to happen as far as reintegration process goes, and then what needs to happen as far as supports go in the home to help keep them safe in the home instead of out on the streets. So this is the first agency of its kind to be implemented in the Denver metro area. So there's a very huge need for that. And that is my presentation. So thanks for listening.